Supreme Commander Rail had never lost a war. Not once. 21 planets had fallen under his command, each one following the same arc, collapsing through the same predictable stages. He knew the pattern the way a surgeon knows an incision, precisely, confidently, without hesitation. First came confusion, then fear, then panic, then surrender. It was reliable. It was proven. It was the nature of weaker things. So, when Earth appeared on his command display, Rail expected nothing he hadn't seen before. The planet rotated slowly at the center of the projection.
Blue, white, green.
Small and unremarkable, just another soft world full of fragile life. Threat level, he asked. An officer stepped forward. Vorlon scale rating, 2. A low sound moved through the command room. Not laughter exactly.
Something more dismissive than that.
A level 2 species meant one thing. They had weapons, but only the kind they used against each other. Estimated conquest time? 10 planetary rotations, the officer replied. Possibly less. Rail nodded once. That was all he needed. Behind him, 800 warships held formation, dark, silent, waiting. He turned slightly. Prepare the declaration. The command went out instantly, across the fleet, across the system, across every human communication channel. The message was the same one he had sent 21 times before. Asterisk, you have been assessed. Your resistance capacity is insufficient. Surrender your planet and comply with occupation directives. Your population will be preserved. Asterisk.
Clean.
Efficient. Final. He waited. Seconds passed. Then minutes. The sensors showed no change. No mass evacuation, no military activation, no emergency signals flooding space. Earth continued as though nothing had happened. Cities glowed. Satellites tracked their orbits. Ships followed their routes. They should be responding, one officer said quietly. They will, Rail replied. He had seen this before. Some species froze. Some needed time to process the scale of what had arrived. Still, something felt off. Exactly 3 minutes later, a response came. A human voice. Female.
Composed.
We received your message. Rail leaned forward slightly. There was no tremor in it. No breathlessness. Give us 10 minutes, the voice said. Silence spread through the command room. 10 minutes? Rail looked at his officers. One of them said, carefully, Commander, that is not a standard response. He knew that. In 21 campaigns, no species had ever asked for time like that. They begged. They negotiated. They threatened. They wept. They did not schedule their surrender. Still, he gave a small gesture. Granite. The fleet held position. 1 minute passed.
2.
5. The sensors returned the same quiet picture, the same normal activity, the same unremarkable system. No hidden fleets. No unusual energy signatures. No defense buildup. Just a weak species, apparently waiting to comply. It should have been reassuring. It wasn't. At minute 7, a junior officer stepped forward. Commander, long-range scans are still clear. Repeat them, Rail said. Same result. Nothing. At minute 9, another voice. Communication logs show no internal panic signals. Rail turned. No panic. No, sir. That was impossible. Every species panicked. Every single one. It was not a cultural variable. It was biology. It was instinct. It was what living things did when something vastly larger than them arrived. At minute 10, something shifted in the room. Not fear, something closer to the feeling before a structure fails. The timer reached 0. The human voice returned. Same tone. Same rhythm. Thank you for waiting. Then, we're ready now. At that exact moment, every sensor on the flagship lit up simultaneously. Not one alert. Not 10. Hundreds. New contacts, appearing all at once, materializing from behind planets, inside asteroid fields, from empty coordinates where nothing had registered seconds before. Contacts, someone shouted. Multiple signatures, 300 more. Stop counting, Rail said. Because the number had stopped being the point. What mattered was simpler and worse. They had not detected them. Not with 800 warships. Not with full system scans. Not with standard protocol. The ships had been there, waiting, hidden. The human voice spoke again, still without urgency. This is Admiral Kira Solis of the Terran Outer Fleet. You entered our system without permission. A brief pause. Now you understand why that was a mistake. No threat. No anger. Just fact, stated plainly, like the closing of a door. All ships, combat formation. The fleet responded instantly. 800 warships shifted into attack positions, weapons charging, shields rising. Rail gave the order with the same certainty he always had. Target nearest hostile vessels. Full fire authorization. The first volley launched, a wall of concentrated energy, precise and overwhelming. It should have ended things quickly. It always did. The strikes hit the human ships directly. Multiple impacts. Explosions lit the dark. Then the smoke cleared. And the ships were still there. Damaged, yes. But moving. Still operational. Still advancing. Damage reports. Rail said. Minimal structural failure. Primary systems still active. That's not possible, someone whispered. But it was. The human ships did not break. They absorbed the strike and kept coming. Then they moved not in straight lines, not in textbook formation. They spread and flowed, breaking into smaller groups that slipped through the fleet's firing lanes and reformed at unexpected angles, constantly shifting, never presenting a clean target. They're not following standard formation patterns, an officer called out. Rail saw it clearly. This was not a fleet in the conventional sense. It was a system, connected, adaptive, each vessel aware of the whole. Destroying individual ships would not disrupt it. The shape simply changed around the gaps. Focus fire. Take down their command vessels. His fleet adjusted. Targeting systems locked. Before they could fire, 6 of his destroyers vanished from the display. Not disabled. Not drifting. Gone. As though the space they'd occupied had simply moved on without them. We've lost 6 destroyers, someone reported. Cause unknown. Rail absorbed it. Continue. The human fleet returned fire, not wildly, not in volume, but with a precision that was almost surgical. Every shot found a target. Every hit removed something meaningful. Ships began to fall.
1.
Then 2. Then 10. They're targeting our flagships, an officer said urgently. But we never transmitted command designations. Rail looked at the display. His command ships, highlighted, targeted, eliminated in sequence. They hadn't broadcast their positions. They had maintained complete signal discipline. It didn't matter. The humans had known anyway. They studied us, he realized. Asterisk, not just our ships, not just our weapons. Our behavior. Our decisions. How we structure command. Where we put our most important vessels. Asterisk. He said it aloud, quietly. They built their fleet for us. The realization moved through the room like cold air. Rail changed tactics. Split formation, 3 groups, attack from separate vectors. It was a proven maneuver, designed to divide an opponent's attention and overwhelm any single defensive line. The human fleet responded instantly. Instead of splitting to match, they collapsed inward, tightening, concentrating, becoming more dangerous rather than less. The attack failed. More ships fell. Pull back, long-range engagement. The fleet retreated and opened distance, switching to heavy artillery. A war of attrition, fought from range. It would be slower but sustainable. The human fleet did not follow. They held position, watching, waiting, and then returned fire from a range that exceeded what Rail's intelligence had suggested was possible. Longer reach, greater accuracy, more destructive yield. They outrange us, someone said. Rail stood very still. That was the moment he truly understood. They had not built to match the galaxy's known powers. They had built to exceed them, specifically, precisely, without advertising the fact until it was necessary. Another wave of human ships moved, not attacking but positioning, closing escape angles, cutting off withdrawal routes, shaping the battlefield into something that had only one exit, and they controlled it. They're not trying to win quickly, Rail said, almost to himself. They're making sure they cannot lose. The human voice spoke again, unhurried, clear. You were given 10 minutes. That was not for surrender. A pause. That was for preparation. Rail looked at the display. Ships falling. Numbers dropping. Control dissolving. For the first time in his career, he stopped thinking about winning and started thinking about what came next. The battle did not end dramatically. It slowed, like a storm burning through its own fuel. The alien fleet pulled back. What remained of 800 warships was barely 300, and the numbers were still falling. Rail stood in silence, watching the count drop. He had commanded fleets for decades. He had seen defeat before, in the abstract, a theoretical possibility he prepared against and never encountered. This was different. This was not simply being outgunned. This was being understood. The human fleet did not pursue. That was the strange part. They stopped, held position, and watched, patient in a way that felt less like mercy and more like a statement. We don't need to chase you. Commander, an officer said quietly. Your orders? He didn't answer immediately. For the first time, he didn't have one ready. The human signal opened again. Same voice. You can continue. Or you can leave. No pressure behind it. No theater. Just a choice, offered plainly. Rail looked around the room at his officers, silent, waiting, watching him. He had 300 ships remaining. Still a formidable force, by most measures. He could fight. He might even cause significant damage.
But win? No.
He understood that now with complete clarity. Because this had never been a battle that could be won by force alone. Humanity had not built a fleet. They had built an argument, one they had been constructing for decades, in silence, without telling anyone. He opened a channel. How long? He asked. The answer came back without hesitation. 63 years. He went still. We started before we had full star travel, the voice continued. We didn't know who would come. We just knew someone would. The room was absolutely quiet. They built all this, one of his officers said softly. Without knowing the enemy? Rail nodded slowly. That's exactly why we lost. Because a fleet built against a specific enemy could be studied, countered, overcome. A fleet built against anyone, against the mere possibility of threat, had no such vulnerability. It had been designed not to defeat a particular adversary, but to ensure that no adversary could defeat it. The human voice one final time. You came here expecting weakness. We prepared for reality. Rail closed his eyes, held that for a moment, then opened them and made his decision. All ships, he said. His voice was level, clear. Power down weapons. Commander, someone started. We are leaving. The order spread across the fleet. Weapons went dark. Engines eased to minimum output. Shields lowered. The transformation of 800 warships from a conquering force into a retreating one took less than 2 minutes. The human fleet watched. Did not move. Rail opened a direct channel. This is Commander Rail of the 7th Conquest Fleet. We request safe exit from your system. The answer came instantly. Approved. Conditions? Minimal speed. No weapons active. A pause. We'll escort you out. Rail nodded once. Accepted. And just like that, the war ended. The damaged fleet moved slowly toward the edge of the system. Behind them, a single human ship followed, not threatening, not aggressive, simply present. A reminder that the choice to leave had been permitted, not taken. Rail stood at the viewport and watched the stars. They looked so weak, one of his officers said softly, looking back at the small blue planet. Rail shook his head.
No.
They just look unafraid. The fleet reached the boundary. Jump coordinates locked. He took one last look at the system, at the fleet that had stopped pursuing because it didn't need to, at the planet that had continued its quiet rotation throughout the entire engagement, at the stars that looked exactly as they had when he arrived. Jump. The stars bent, and they were gone. On the bridge of the Terran Outer Fleet's command vessel, Admiral Solis watched the empty space where the enemy had been. Confirm exit, she said. Confirmed. They're gone. She nodded once. Stand down, combat readiness. The crew exhaled, slowly, together. Not celebration. Not yet. They understood what this had been, and what it hadn't. This was not an ending.
It was a proof of concept.
Years earlier, the arguments had been loud. Asterisk, it's unnecessary. It's too expensive. It's paranoia. Why build a fleet we may never need to use? Asterisk. So Lise remembered the answer, the one they had all eventually agreed on. Because if we ever do need it, we won't have time to build it. Far across the system's edge, Rail sat in silence. His aide placed the old intelligence file on the display in front of him. Asterisk humanity. Vorlon classification score. 2. Asterisk. He stared at it for a long moment, then closed it. That system is wrong, he said, because the Vorlon scale measured visible strength. It counted weapons and warships and rated civilizations against a fixed rubric of observable power. It had no category for patience, no metric for preparation, no way to assess a species that had looked at the universe, understood what it implied, and spent 63 years quietly building an answer, not for any specific enemy, but for the simple, honest fact that the universe did not reward the unprepared. Humanity had not been the strongest. They had simply been the most ready. Back on Earth, life continued. Cities moved. People worked. Children played in afternoon light. Nothing on the surface looked different from the day before. But somewhere in the outer dark, ships waited, silent, hidden, patient. Not for war. For the next time someone looked at a small blue planet and made the same mistake. And if that day came, there would be no scrambling, no panic, no desperate signals flooding space. Just a calm voice and 10 minutes. Not for surrender. For preparation.
End.